But okay, let's move on to college football. Super exciting weekend of college football. Before we talk about the games that everyone cares about, just want to give a huge shout out to Southern Miss, my alma mater, the team that I love, beating UAB 37-2. Incredible. UAB has been a huge monkey on our back for a really long time. So it was great to get that win versus them. But anyways, moving on. Oklahoma Oklahoma is done. I don't really foresee any way of Oklahoma getting into the college football playoff without some serious help. Their losses or their loss to Kansas State was just too bad. If they were to come back this week, beat Iowa State comfortably, then I would have said there may have been an outside chance, but they beat Iowa State by one stinking point, 42-41. That is not good enough. That is not good enough. That is almost as good of a loss in my as good as a loss in my mind. It's not, but it does you no favors with the college football playoff committee. They could win out, beat Baylor, beat or win the rest of their games, win the championship against whoever. I don't think it's going to be good enough unless a whole lot of teams in front of them start losing and start losing a lot. So I don't think Oklahoma is going anywhere. I think that Saturday, even though they won, I think that was probably the nail in the coffin for them. And I just got to talk about Baylor and Minnesota. Baylor and Minnesota is so much fun to me. It's so much fun. This happens every year, and I always get really excited about it, and usually I'm let down. But I actually kind of believe in at least one of those teams, Baylor. I kind of believe in Baylor, that Baylor could maybe run the table, go undefeated, and just barely sneak into the playoff. Because if Baylor runs the table, Baylor is more than likely going to be in the playoff, because I just don't know how you could reasonably argue that an undefeated Power 5 team that wins their championship it can't be in the playoffs when there are teams that have dropped a game. I don't see how you could reasonably argue that. Yeah, I know SEC, blah blah blah, but I don't buy that argument unless there are some distinguishing factors in there, or undistinguishable factors, like the same record. Okay, lean SEC. Neither won their championship. Okay, lean SEC. Those arguments are fine, but when you have a 13-0 team that in an 11-1 team, yeah, okay, the SEC team may have played a tougher schedule, but they lost. They're out. You have to give the nod to the undefeated Power 5 team. So if Minnesota and or Baylor go undefeated, I don't know how you could reasonably keep them out in lieu of a one-loss team. I don't see how it could. So if either one of them goes undefeated, I think you have to let them in. I just do. And it would be amazing. It would be awesome. The college football needs more Cinderella stories. I'm so fucking sick of Alabama, Clemson national championships, of Ohio State, Oklahoma always being in the national championship, LSU, whoever. It's like the same 6 or 7 teams every single year. It's so boring. It's not fun. You have to have some parity for it to be fun. And if you want the definition of parity, it's Baylor and Minnesota. And Minnesota just pulled off possibly the biggest upset of the year. Nobody believed in Minnesota. No, everybody was like, okay, they haven't played anybody. They almost got beat by this team. They almost got beat by that team. Yeah, they're undefeated, but they are the most unimpressive, undefeated team of all time. I would argue that might be Clemson, which we'll talk about in a minute, but Minnesota shut everybody up yesterday with their win against Penn State, because Penn State is no joke. They are no joke. And Minnesota won. They won. They didn't beat them down. They didn't, destroy them or anything like that, but they just flat out won. And that's an insanely impressive win. Yeah, it's not LSU over Bama. It's not that, but it's very, very, very impressive. And if they can somehow win the rest of their regular season games and then somehow pull off the upset against Ohio State, which I'm very skeptical of, they'll be in the playoff as well. So I love those two teams. I wish them all the best. I hope you guys go undefeated. I hope you guys pull off as many upsets as you can. Good luck to you. I'm always disappointed by you guys. Don't disappoint me this year. At least one of you. I'm not asking for both. Just one of you make it. Right now, LSU is the clear favorite in the college landscape with their win over Alabama. And it was pretty convincing as well. Pretty convincing win. So, yeah, I just don't see any other team that is really challenging for the status of best team in college football right now. It's got to be LSU. Bama, I actually think that this is not that great of a Bama team this year. Coming into the year, I said that I didn't think that I thought that they might be unbeatable. I really did, but they have shown far more holes than I thought that they would. And yeah, they just they're probably a playoff worthy team. They're probably one of the best 4 teams in the country, but I don't think that they are a threat. Well, they are a threat for the national championship because it's Alabama, but I don't think that they are clearly the best team at any point this season. I don't think they've been the clear best team. I think at this point it's LSU. Sorry about the cuts there. I've had like 5 phone calls since I started recording this. It's the nature of the beast, I suppose. But LSU, like I was saying, LSU I think is the clear favorite right now to win the national championship. And then I think Ohio State is the clear number 2 right behind them. Kind of an incredible stat. They've played 3 ranked opponents this year, and they've beaten those ranked opponents by an average of 37 points. That is an impressive statistic, especially for a team that isn't Alabama, that's, an Alabama or an LSU playing out of conference games against like the 20th ranked opponent and beating them by 50. This is Ohio State. Yeah, I mean, one of them was Cincinnati, but it's still very, very impressive and decisive wins for Ohio State, and they really haven't been challenged all year. Clemson, on the other hand, may have the easiest path to the college football playoff in the history of college football, or to the national championship in the history of college football. I've been looking at their schedule, and it is so insanely, brutally soft. I don't know if Clemson gets into the college football playoff this year, and you left Central Florida out 2 years ago when Central Florida was undefeated. They beat Auburn in the bowl game, even though that's, hindsight or whatever. But they had been undefeated. They had beat like 4 ranked teams. They had 4 ranked wins on their schedule. Yeah, I mean, they weren't insane ranked wins, but they were ranked wins. I don't know how you can argue for keeping Central Florida out and putting Clemson in, other than this lazy ass argument of, they're not a Power 5 school, so they can't play. They can't play because they're not Power 5. They don't have this arbitrary conference that they're in. Central Florida was one of the 4 best teams in the country that year. I have no doubt in my mind about that. Clemson, I have a whole lot of doubts about them being one of the 4 best teams in the country. They might be. But man, they haven't beaten anybody, really. I mean, it's just a bunch of duds. They almost lost to who was it? North Carolina, who's not great. I mean, the ACC is very weak this year, very, very weak. And their out of conference is just as weak. So I'm not in love with Clemson right now. Obviously, if they go undefeated, they're gonna make it, but I think that it points to a broken system. The fact that Clemson, nobody even thinks about it. Yeah, they'll get in. Nobody even looks at what they've done. But Central Florida, for whatever reason, people just kind of zoned out. They didn't even think about it. Obviously, Central Florida shouldn't get in. It's a broken system. It's a broken system, and I think it's one that needs to be fixed.